don't think any Americans are going to want to go to Brazil.
What's up guys and welcome. You're watching Fazi Fitness. Let's start this video with Sergio Oliva Jr.'s update. And I am afraid it is not a good news. We have been waiting for Sergio Oliva Jr. to announce his next show. What show is gonna do in 2024. And the expectations were really higher than ever. And the reason was, not only was he working with a new coach, Neil Hill this time, but he has been training with Dorian Yates for months and months now. So ever since he switched to a new coach, which happened last year, we were all expecting to see something very different from Sergio this year. Almost everyone was thinking that maybe this new combination of Sergio with Dorian Yates and Neil Hill, maybe this was the missing piece in Sergio's puzzle. And maybe he can finally peak right. He can finally peak at his 100%. But he posted a bad news on his IG story, that he has suffered from a fractured ankle. And that must have really affected his legs workouts. So it has been 4 weeks since that happened. So let's just hope that this is nothing serious. Because although the fans generally have been disappointed with Sergio's performance, especially in these last couple of years, but we have seen that he has been working really hard with Dorian Yates in the gym. And I'm sure he's working equally hard in that diet department as well. And who knows, maybe Sergio with a new coach, he can finally bring it on the day of the show. So with this current injury, his plans of stepping back on the stage will be uncertain for a while. The last time we saw Sergio on the stage, that was at California Pro 2023. And that was a really stressful year for Sergio as well, with that traffic accident that happened in Dubai, and his inability to compete in shows like the Arnold Brazil and the New York Pro, the shows that he was actually supposed to do. So I think Sergio is 39 years old, so he better make this comeback happen sooner than later, because time is literally running out for him. Next up we have Derek Lunsford, the reigning Mr. Olympia, and his physique update. About 6 months out, and about 4 weeks out of this year's Pittsburgh Pro guest posing. So no surprise at all that Derek is maintaining such a great off-season condition. Who else rocks an 8-pack during the growing season? Even last year when Derek wasn't the winning Mr. Olympia, he was super impressive throughout his off-season. So Derek needs to gain more density and more muscle maturity, especially in his chest and his shoulders area, if he wants to successfully defend his title. And that is why he is utilizing all this year to solely focus on growing on getting bigger, because that was extremely crucial for him. Derek knows his biggest competition is still gonna be Hadi Choopan. And the biggest weaknesses of Derek Lunsford are the strongest parts of Hadi Choopan. So I have a question for you guys. Have we seen the best of Derek yet? Now in my opinion, definitely not. His legs lose volume as he pulls water before the competition. So as long as he comes in with those improvements, he has a very great shot at retaining his Mr. Olympia title in October. And we all already know that Derek is gonna be just unbeatable from the back, especially in that back double biceps shot. And it's just gonna be interesting that the margin by which he beats the other guys who will be in contention for this year's Mr. Olympia, guys like Hadi Choopan, and also guys like Nick Walker. And the reason I'm not mentioning Samson Dauda is because Samson is still a bit behind in that back development, especially in comparison to all these 3 guys. So if we talk about Hadi Choopan, he is most likely gonna take the back lat spread. That pose is turning out to be one of the best poses for Hadi. So Derek is gonna be ready for the Pittsburgh Pro guest posing. So will he command that stage as the reigning Mr. Olympia? Well, most certainly, but we have to keep in mind, Nick Walker is gonna be there, and he is gonna be in a contest-ready condition. But I have to say, Derek's confidence, especially after winning the Olympia, it has been on a different level this time.
Tag him in, wishing I was at Detroit. Truth as it is that I really don't have the money to one side right now to book flights, accommodation. Basically that, on top of time, I've got a lot of travel commitments. I've got Gasp coming up, I've got the Branch Warren Classic coming up. I'm moving home, so I'm moving house and I'm having to secure a new house without going into too many details.
James Hollingshead finally comes out with a fair explanation on why he isn't doing Detroit Pro, which is going to be happening this weekend. So money seems to be one of the issues here. He has to fly out to the US, pay for the accommodations and a lot of other stuff as well. So the reason why all of us fans were constantly asking him to do Detroit Pro is because he was dieting so hard. In fact, I believe he was dieting harder than Arnold Classic Prep, because this time he wasn't having any refeeds, unlike the Arnold Ohio Prep, where we saw him constantly getting refeeds even during the peak week. But this time in that post-contest phase, he was just chasing conditioning. And he wasn't really worried about the fullness, because he wasn't trying to step on stage. And that is why I think we can all agree that this is probably the best James has ever looked, especially in terms of conditioning. But still, that is such a genuine reason, and no one can really argue about that.
Just, you know, you have to understand that if I come and do a show, especially my friend's show, I want to come and present something worthwhile and I feel is a benefit to them. Ben is a great friend of mine, as is Fuad, as is Paul. And I would love nothing more than to be at their show in my life right now. I want to have a stable life and I want to be able to make sure I have a nice home to live in. And that takes me being present here at the minute.
So what does this mean for James? Well, he's gonna take care of that knee injury and go back to the drawing board, go back into another off-season. And he will most probably compete closer to the Olympia this year, hoping to get a win and get his Olympia qualification as well. Also, we have to keep this in mind. James Hollingshead never really showed any real interest in competing at Detroit Pro. Unlike guys like Mohamed Shaban and John De La Rosa. They obviously did not sign any contract, but they must have shown some interest to Fuad about, because otherwise he would not have announced their names on his podcast without them showing any interest.
I wasn't happy with my physique in regards to what it can be while I have this issue that I've had plaguing my mind since the beginning of the year, before I even started prepping for the Arnold. So I did a prep knowing I had an issue, and I went all the way through to see how it was, and I wasn't quite happy with it.
How many times he exited the stage because he couldn't breathe? Yeah, he was walking off stage and he was bending over because he couldn't breathe. And I walked over to get my forehead dried off, and they told us no. It was like, no, you have to stay on the line.
So I recently talked about Tonio Burton and his experience at the Arnold Classic Brazil. And I also mentioned that everyone should watch that interview that he did at the Muscle Discord. And if some of the things that Tonio Burton mentioned about that show are real, about how Rafael Brandao was given a VIP treatment, while all the other athletes were treated unfairly backstage, then I believe the IFBB should definitely address that.
You can't walk off stage and go get your breath. We couldn't even get Pat dry. At first, he was telling us no.
But why?
Yeah.
It's like, that's the standard. That's just normal.
That's what I told him. I was like, I need to get the sweat. And
Yeah.
he was like, no, you need to stay on the line. So I said, oh, all right. And that's why you see me when we're posing now, like as we're posing, I'm like wiping sweat out of my eyes because I can't see.
Yes, we all know Rafael Brandao is the hottest star in Brazil, but that doesn't give the officials the right to give him special treatment. Like for instance, they allowed him to pump up longer than everyone else.
Yeah.
And then when they called us up to line up, we couldn't pump up no more, right?
Yes.
Well, he was down there still pumping up. And when the expediter lady was like, well, if he's not up here, then oh well. They stopped us from walking on and called him until he came before going on.
Also, did some of you guys notice that there was very little oil on Godvito as well as Tonio Burton's body, especially during that prejudging, while Rafael Brandao on the other hand had good amount of oil. Well, Tonio Burton had a very different explanation for that, and I have to say that is really ridiculous.
Backstage, he had like 10 people oiling him up.
Okay.
They were even like rolling his face
Okay.
to where we're asking to get oiled, and like we'll get a few pats here and there, and they're like, okay, you're good to go.
Just imagine how bad of an experience Tonio Burton had in Brazil, that he went as far as saying this, that if a top Brazilian athlete is competing at the Arnold Classic Brazil, no American athlete should do that show. And that is how much disappointed Tonio Burton was about the judging there as well. And I think he should be.
I've never heard the bass from fans' voice before. It was so loud. Recommend anyone to go experience it in that light.
Yeah.
But I mean, for competition wise, without me even saying anything, I don't think any Americans are going to want to go to Brazil.
If he's competing, or if the top runner in that show is Brazilian,
Right.
it doesn't make sense. I get it, but
How could Rafael Brandao had like perfect scores at that show when there is a mutual consensus that Tonio Burton was overall in a better condition? He was definitely beating him in both the back shots. And yes, while I agree that Rafael Brandao should have won that show, but it was a much more closer show than the scorecards represent. And also, so many people had Tonio Burton winning the show. And it isn't just this. Tonio Burton had so much more to say about his experience in Brazil in that interview. Now, even a little politics isn't allowed when it comes to the judging, but we all know it happens here and there every now and then, especially when two guys are this close. But here is the thing, every athlete should be treated equally backstage. Until these guys step on that stage, everyone is equal.
He was highly favored. I get it. His
Yeah.
hometown, but what rubbed me the wrong way was when we were doing our back double shots and he
Okay.
did his arm thing. You know, he held his arm out there so he couldn't pull out. And I didn't get mad about it. This is bodybuilding. You know, I actually like
Yeah.
that type of thing. But when the expeditor came up, he came to me and looked at me and said, "Yo, what are you doing? What are you trying to do?" And so I was like, "What? Like, all right, this is the game we're playing. Okay, like,
Yes.
okay, now I get it."
So hit the thumbs up button if you liked the video, and smash the subscribe button if you wanna come back for more. Thanks for watching.